2 Kings chapter 9. Elisha and Jehu of Israel. Elisha the prophet called one of the guild prophets and said to him, "Get ready for your journey. Take this flask of oil with you and go to Ramoth Gilead. When you get there, look for Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. Enter and take him away from his companions and bring him into an inner chamber. From the flask you have, pour oil on his head and say, 'Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel.' Then open the door and flee without delay." The prophet's aide, went to Ramoth Gilead. When he arrived, the commanders of the army were in session. He said, "I have a message for you, commander." Jehu asked, "For which one of us?" "For you, commander," he answered. Jehu got up and went into the house. Then the prophet's aide poured the oil on his head and said, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anoint you king over the people of the Lord, over Israel. You shall destroy the house of Ahab your master. Thus will I avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the other servants of the Lord shed by Jezebel. The whole house of Ahab shall perish. I will cut off from Ahab's line every male, whether bond or free, in Israel. I will make the house of Ahab like that of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like that of Baasha, son of Ahijah. In the confines of Jezreel, the dogs shall devour Jezebel so that no one can bury her." Then he opened the door and fled. When Jehu rejoined the master's servants, they asked him, "Is all well? Why did that madman come to you?" He replied, "You know, that kind of man and his talk." But they said, "Tell us another lie." So he told them, "This is what the prophet's aide said to me. 'Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel.'" At once each one took his garment, spread it under Jehu on the bare steps, blew the horn, and cried out, "Jehu is king." The end of the Omrid dynasty. Death of Horam of Israel. Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, formed a conspiracy against Horam. Horam with all of Israel had been besieging Ramoth Gilead against Hazael, king of Aram. But he returned to Jezreel to be healed of the wounds the Arameans had inflicted on him in the battle against Hazael, king of Aram. Jehu said to them, "If this is what you really want, see that no one escapes from the city to report in Jezreel." Then Jehu mounted the chariot and drove to Jezreel, where Horam lay ill, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had come to visit him. The watchman standing on the tower in Jezreel saw the troop of Jehu coming and reported, "I see chariots." Horam said, "Get a driver and send him to meet them and to ask whether all is well." See, a horseman went out to meet him and said, "The king asks, is everything all right?" Jehu said, "What does it matter to you how things are? Get behind me." The watchman reported to the king, "The messenger has reached them, but is not returning." Horam sent a second horseman, who went to them and said, "The king asks, is everything all right?" "What does it matter to you how things are?" Jehu replied, "Get behind me." The watchman reported, "He has reached them, but is not returning. The driving is like that of Jehu, son of Nimshi. He drives like a madman." "Hitch up my chariot," said Horam, and they hitched up his chariot. Then Horam, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, set out, each in his own chariot, to meet Jehu. They reached him near the plot of ground of Naboth the Jezreelite. When Horam recognized Jehu, he asked, "Is everything all right, Jehu?" Jehu replied, "How could everything be all right as long as all of the harlotry and sorcery of your mother Jezebel continues?" Horam reined about and fled, crying to Ahaziah, "Treason, Ahaziah!" But Jehu had drawn his bow, and he shot Horam between the shoulders, so that the arrow went through his heart, and he collapsed in his chariot. Then Jehu said to the adjutant Bidkar, "Take him and throw him into the plot of ground in the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember when you and I were driving teams behind Ahab his father, the Lord delivered this oracle against him. As surely as I saw yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, oracle of the Lord, I will repay you, for in that very plot of ground excuse me for in that very plot of ground, oracle of the Lord. So now take him and throw him into the plot of ground in keeping with the word of the Lord." Death of Ahaziah of Judah. Seeing what was happening, Ahaziah, king of Judah, fled toward Beth-Hagan. Jehu pursued him, and shouting him too. They struck him as he rode through the pass of Gur, near Ibleam, but he continued his flight as far as Megiddo, and died there. His servants brought him in a chariot to Jerusalem, and they buried him in his grave with his ancestors in the city of David. In the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah became king over Judah. The death of Jezebel. Jehu came to Jezreel, and when Jezebel heard of it, she shadowed her eyes, adorned her hair, and looked down from her window. As Jehu came through the gate, she cried out, "Is all well with you, Zimri, murderer of your master?" Jehu looked up to the window and shouted, "Who is on my side? Who?" At this, 2 or 3 eunuchs looked down toward him. "Throw her down." He ordered they threw her down, and some of her blood spurted against the wall and against the horses. Jehu trod over her body, and after eating and drinking, he said, "Attend to that accursed woman and bury her, for she was the daughter of a king." But when they went to bury her, they found nothing of her but the skull, the feet, and the hands. They returned to Jehu, and when they told him, he said, "This is the word the Lord spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite. In the confines of Jezreel, the dogs shall devour the flesh of Jezebel. The corpse of Jezebel shall be like dung in the field in the confines of Jezreel, so that no one can say this was Jezebel." Death of the sons of Ahab of Israel. Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria to the elders who were rulers of Jezreel and to Ahab's guardians. Jehu wrote, "Since your master's sons are with you, as well as his chariots, horses, fortified city, and weaponry, when this letter reaches you, decide which is the best and the fittest of your master's sons. Place him on his father's throne and fight for your master's house." They were overcome with fright and said, "If the 2 kings could not withstand him, how can we?" So the master of the elders and the guardians sent this message to Jehu, "We are your servants, and we will do everything you tell us. We will proclaim no one king. Do whatever you think best." So Jehu wrote them a second letter. "If you are on my side and will obey me, bring along the heads of your master's sons and come to me in Jezreel at this time tomorrow." The 70 princes were in the care of prominent men of the city who were rearing them. When the letter arrived, they took the princes and slew all 70 of them, put their heads in baskets, and sent them to Jehu in Jezreel. A messenger came in and told him, "They have brought the heads of the princes." He said, "Pile them into 2 heaps at the gate of the city until morning." In the morning he came outside, stood there, and said to all the people, "You are guiltless, for it was I who conspired against my lord and slew him. But who killed all of these? Know that not a single word which the Lord has spoken against the house of Ahab shall fail. The Lord has accomplished what he decreed through his servant Elijah." And so Jehu slew all who were left of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, as well as all his powerful supporters, intimates, and priests, leaving him no survivor. Then he went back inside. Death of the relatives of Ahaziah of Judah. He set out for Samaria, and at Beth-ekt Haroim, on the way, Jehu came across relatives of Ahaziah, king of Judah. "Who are you?" he asked, and they said, "We are relatives of Ahaziah. We are going down to visit the princes in the family of the queen mother." "Take them alive," Jehu ordered. They were taken alive, 42 in number. Then slain at the pit of Beth-ekt. Not one of them survived. When he set out from there, Jehu met Jehonadab, son of Reshab, on the road. He greeted him and asked, "Are you with me wholeheartedly, as I am with you?" "Yes," he replied. "If you are, give me your hand." He gave him his hand, and he had him mount his chariot. He said, "Come with me, and see my zeal for the Lord." And they took him along in his chariot. Slaughter of the worshippers of Baal. When he arrived in Samaria, Jehu slew all who were left of Ahab's line in Samaria, doing away with them completely, according to the word the Lord spoke to Elijah. Jehu gathered all the people together and said to them, "Ahab served Baal to some extent, but Jehu will serve him yet more. Now summon for me all of Baal's prophets, all his servants, and all his priests. See that no one is absent, for I have a great sacrifice for Baal. Whoever is absent shall not live." This Jehu did as a ruse, so that he might destroy the servants of Baal. Jehu said further, "Proclaim a solemn assembly in honor of Baal." They did so, and Jehu sent word of it throughout all Israel. All the servants of Baal came. There was no one who did not come. They came to the temple of Baal, and it was filled with wall to wall. Then Jehu said to the custodian of the wardrobe, "Bring out garments for all the servants of Baal." Then he had brought out the garments for them. Jehu, with Jehonadab, son of Reshab, entered the temple of Baal and said to the servants of Baal, "Search and be sure that there is no one who serves the Lord here with you, but only servants of Baal." Then they proceeded to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had stationed 80 troops outside with this warning: any of you who lets someone escape of those whom I shall deliver into your hands shall pay life for life. As soon as he finished offering the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guards and aides, "Go in and slay them, let no one escape." So the guards and aides put them to the sword and cast them out. Afterward they went into the inner shrine of the temple of Baal and took out the pillars of the temple of Baal. They burned the shrine, tore down the pillar of Baal, tore down the temple of Baal, and turned it into a latrine as it remains today. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal in Israel. Death of Jehu of Israel. However, Jehu did not desist from the sins which Jeroboam son of Nebat had caused Israel to commit. The golden calves of Bethel and at Dan, the Lord said to Jehu, "Because you have done well what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all that was in my heart, your sons to the 4th generation shall sit upon the throne of Israel." But Jehu was not careful to walk in the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all of his heart, since he did not desist from the sins which Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. At that time the Lord began to dismember Israel. Hazael defeated the Israelites throughout their territory east of the Jordan, all the land of Gilead of the Gadites, Reubenites, and Manassites, from Aroer on the Wadi Arnon up through Gilead and Bashan. The rest of the acts of Jehu, with all that he did and all his valor, are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Jehu rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria, and his son Jehoahaz succeeded him as king. The length of Jehu's reign over Israel was 28 years in Samaria. Chapter 11. Death of the heirs of Ahaziah of Judah. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she began to kill off the whole royal family. But Jehosheba, daughter of King Jehoram, and sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, Ahaziah's son, and spirited him away, along with his nurse. From the bedroom where the princes were about to be slain, he was concealed from Athaliah, and so he did not die. For 6 years he remained hidden with her in the house of the Lord, while Athaliah ruled as king over the land. Death of Athaliah. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada summoned the captains of the Carians and of the guards. He had them come to him in the house of the Lord, made a covenant with them, exacted an oath from them in the house of the Lord, and then showed them the king's son. He gave them these orders: "This is what you must do. 1/3 of you who come on duty on the Sabbath shall guard the king's house. Another third shall be at the gate Sur, and the last third shall be at the gate behind the guards. You shall guard the palace on all sides, while the 2 of your divisions who are going off to duty that week shall keep guard over the house of the Lord. For the king you shall surround the king, each with drawn weapons, and anyone who tries to approach the guard detail to be killed. Stay with the king wherever he goes." The captains did just as Jehoiada the priest commanded. Each took his troops, both those going on duty for the week and those going off duty that week, and came to Jehoiada the priest. He gave the captains King David's spear and quivers, which were in the house of the Lord. All the guards with drawn weapons lined up from the southern to the northern limit of the enclosure, surrounding the altar and the temple on the king's behalf. Then Jehoiada brought out the king's son and put the crown and the testimony upon him. They proclaimed him king and anointed him, clapping their hands and shouting, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise made by the people, she came before them in the house of the Lord. When she saw the king standing by the column, as was the custom, and the captains and trumpeters near the king, and all the people of the land rejoicing and blowing trumpets, Athaliah tore her garments and cried out, "Treason, treason." Then Jehoiada the priest instructed the captains in command of the force, "Escort her with a guard detail. If anyone follows her, let him die by the sword. For the priest has said, she must not die in the house of the Lord." So they seized her, and when she reached the horse gate of the king's house, she was put to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant before the Lord and the king and the people, by which they would be the Lord's people, and another between the king and the people. Thereupon all the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and demolished it. They shattered its altars and images completely, and slew Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. Jehoiada the priest anointed a detachment for the house of the Lord, and took the captains, the Carians, the guards, and all the people of the land, and they led the king down from the house of the Lord. They came through the guards' gate to the king's house, and Joash took his seat on the royal throne. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, now that Athaliah had been slain with the sword at the king's house. Kings of Judah and Israel. Chapter 12. The reign of Joash in Judah. Joash was 7 years old when he became king. In the 7th year of Jehu, Joash became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abiah, from Beersheba. Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight as long as he lived, because Jehoiada the priest guided him. Though the high places did not disappear. The people continued to sacrifice and to burn incense on the high places. Joash said to the priests, all the funds for sacred purposes that are brought to the house of the Lord, the census tax, personal redemption money, and all funds that are freely brought to the house of the Lord, the priests may take for themselves, each from his own vendor. However, they must make whatever repairs on the temple may prove necessary. Nevertheless, as late as the 23rd year of the reign of King Joash, the priests had not made needed repairs on the temple. Accordingly, King Joash summoned the priest Jehoiada and the other priests. He asked, why did you not repair the temple? You must no longer take funds from your vendors, but you shall turn them over for the repairs. So the priests agreed that they would neither take funds from the people nor make the repairs on the temple. Jehoiada the priest then took a chest, bored a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right as one entered the house of the Lord. The priests who kept the doors would put into it all of the silver that was brought to the house of the Lord. When they noticed that there was a large amount of silver in the chest, the royal scribe would come up, and the high priest, and they would gather up and weigh all the silver that was in the house of the Lord. The amount thus realized they turned over to the workers assigned to the house of the Lord. They in turn would pay to the carpenters and builders working in the house of the Lord, and to the masons and stonecutters, and for the purchase of the wood and hewn stone used in repairing the breaches, and for other expenses that were necessary to repair the house of the Lord. None of the valuables brought to the house of the Lord were used there to make silver basins, snuffers, bowls, trumpets, or any gold or silver article. Instead, they were given to the workers, and with them they repaired the house of the Lord. Moreover, no reckoning was asked of those who were provided with the funds to give to the workers, because they held positions of trust. The funds from reparation offerings and from purification offerings, however, were not brought to the house of the Lord. They belonged to the priests. Then Hazael, king of Aram, came up and attacked Gath. When he had taken it, Hazael resolved to go on to attack Jerusalem. Joash, king of Judah, took all of the sacred offerings presented by his forebears, Jehoshaphat, Horam, and Ahaziah, kings of Judah, as well as his own, and all of the gold there was in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and sent them to King Hazael of Aram, who then turned away from Jerusalem. The rest of the acts of Joash, with all that he did, are recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Certain of his officials entered into a conspiracy and struck Joash down at Beth Milo. Josachar, son of Shemaiah, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, were the officials who struck and killed him. He was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Amaziah succeeded him as king. God bless you.